So we've been exploring the various character classes, looking at some starting tactica, asking the question, how's the run-through going to be with this character? And naturally, we all have our favorite character classes, character kits. What about the Avenger? What about the Avenger? That's what I want to explore. That's the questions I want to ask. And I'm making my way through the series now, the saga. I'm going to do the entire BG run-through with an Avenger. Now, initially, part of my player personality, I've spent more time rolling for stats in Baldur's Gate than perhaps playing the game. I need just mentally, psychologically, tactically, to be 90, 91, 92, or higher. The Avenger, so stats are important for me. I want to get good stats. I want to get the tomes. And then with the tomes, I then want to have some gear to further boost it. The Avenger right away starts with a decrease in strength and constitution. So on the surface, it looks like, okay, you're a druid. You've got some shape shifting. It's a little bit different, but the other kits have that. You've got your spells. But to gain some other spells, some limited use wizard spells, we're trading constitution and strength. That seems pretty serious. Is it, though? I mean, I had to really step back initially and say, yes, I'm obsessed with stats. But looking at the druid kit, the druid class, is that really a big deal? And I would counter that. And then we'll open it up in the comments for you guys. I don't have 18 strength. I'm going to get 16 max if I'm going to put it into that. Well, was I ever going to really need 18 strength? I mean, am I going to be a frontline fighter druid? I don't have the weapons specializations. I don't have the raw number of attacks as a frontline fighter, barbarian, berserker, cavalier, paladin. I don't have the second tier, such as monks. So am I really going to be a frontline fighter? I mean, you could play your druid as a frontline fighter, and you want to have some sort of ability to attack based on the use or misuse of spells, or if you just get surrounded. But is that really a big deal? There are also a number of magic items. I'm not going to give away any spoilers because you need to discover them for yourself. I don't know where you are in the game listening to these vlogs, these Tactica vlogs, but I can boost strength through magic items. I can buff up that way. The counter would be, depending on the item I'm using, it's going to take up a body slot, and there might be some other items that I want to utilize taking up that slot. But I don't think the 18 strength is really that big of a hit based on a druid/priest class kit. All right, constitution. I like to get 18 con on everything as a minimum, because then I get the tome to 19. Then I can get some magic gear or other ways to buff to 20, and I get a nice little regeneration going. That's going to be much, much later in the game with the Avenger, just based on that -2. But again, base hit points, they cap at 16. The hit point bonuses, which we want. I want every single little hit point I can get. They cap at 16 for the Constitution bonuses. The only place I can see, and again, I can raise that through items, the only place I see a slight hit is if I was going to use the Claw. I wasn't going to name any magic items, but there's a magic item in BG1 that has some interesting properties, but in order to equip it, you take a con hit. That is going to cut in. If I'm at 16 max, that brings it down to 14. That is going to cut in. So that's not a game breaker, but it certainly puts that magic item aside. What do we gain? We gain the ability to have some very useful and offensive-based mage spells through the ritual bonding and process of becoming an Avenger that actually stack and scale really, really well. What this means is these abilities, you have some character class abilities that are kind of neat and they're good early on, but they don't stack. I guess the best example would be if I'm a sorcerer, do I really want to take sleep? That's going to work halfway through BG1, but then just become useless. So there are certain class abilities certain spells, certain innate things that as the game moves on, I mean, the ball spawn power of horror is kind of neat, but eventually it caps out somewhere and it's not as useful. And now you're stuck with that clicky forever. Well, the Avenger is one of the few class kits that these spell-like abilities not only allow you to do stuff that the Druid just can't, you now don't have to rely on magic items to do it, they all scale. Chromatic Orb is, like, in my opinion, a really amazing spell. It's a level 1 wizard spell. Doesn't do that much damage, but as you level up, it scales with the effects. Stun, paralysis, turn to stone, outright death. The damage isn't really the important piece. The important piece is the what ifs. Now, yes, later on in the series, in Baldur's Gate, saving throws of a lot of the monsters you're going to fight are up there. They have to roll really poorly. But for an innate spell that's going to stick and scale as you move through the game, that's really good. Web is huge. Web is huge in BG1. In Siege, it helps tremendously just based on the trash mobs that you're going to fight, the mobs and mobs of stuff throwing it down. And, even in BG2, it's useful. Web is a spell that is always going to have some use. You have that ability. Then we get improved invisibility. I'm going to take it, but that's kind of whack. That's kind of broken. I mean, regular invisibility is good just because you can pop it off. We see this with the sorcerer. You pop it off, you're invisible, you can get into position. Improved invisibility is like crazy because now I'm going to be casting spells. I can't be targeted. I've got the armor class adjustment if I am attacked. That's big. So to have that alone built on the ability of the Druid spells, that's like really, really awesome. And then we've got Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt BG1 is very, very powerful. There's a lot of places where it's going to bounce. Effective in Siege, just again, because lots and lots of mobs. BG2, okay, places for it to bounce and hit things in line. There's a lot of monsters, but now they have a lot more hit points. But hey, that's great. These are all spells that stack and utilize. They're going to complement the Druid. So on that alone, before you even get into the shape-shifting bonuses, like that's, in my opinion, worth, and this is coming again from a guy that loves the stats, that's worth the argument of losing -2 strength. I wasn't going to be a frontline fighter anyway. And the con, okay, I'd like 18, but again, it caps at 16. That's just kind of a personal pet peeve. Then we move into the Druid spells. So now you have this duality. Druid spells are interesting because you have kind of the stock crossover with cleric/priest spells, the ability to heal, the ability to buff, and some of the spells are just kind of like named a little bit differently. They work the same. The offensive spells are kind of situational. They control nature. You can do summons. The Druid is an interesting support character. It's not going to get out there and deal raw damage. It's going to support somewhat in buffs, but more in distracting opponents, throwing down bonuses, something like Insect Swarm, things like that, and magnifying the effectiveness of the rest of your party members. But you're laying over offensively. You're laying over Lightning Bolt. You're laying over the invisibility to hide yourself. You're laying over Chromatic Orb. You're laying over Web. I mean, these are evergreen mage spells that you're going to use forever. That's huge. Yes, you're going to need a mage in the party. Absolutely, unless you're going a hardcore solo run. You're going to need a mage. And I won't say now don't take Web and Lightning Bolt for your mage, but now you're going to have two clickies. You're going to have two kind of offensive spellcasters putting out the stuff. So early on, you can try and do that and then switch. Or you can have the redundancy based on the fight. If you need the Druid buffs up front, your mage can be hitting out the offensive spells, and then you can switch to the innate abilities. A very, very interesting class. A very interesting class. A lot of fun to play. But do you feel that the stat adjustment is too harsh for what it brings? And at first glance, it is. You're like, wow, -2 to strength, -2 to con. That's huge. That's huge throughout it. It'd be huge if you were a fighter. be huge if you were a tank, but for a support class character, I don't know if it's that big of a hit. So I've been reevaluating that, replaying it. I certainly think it's one of those character class kits that we don't see as much in general because it seems like a lot of players want to go stock druid or totem to kind of get those animal summons. Avengers kind of lumped in there with the shapeshifter, which I don't quite think is fair. I think it is a very viable class and a very fun class. Your thoughts, opinions. Someone out there is like, Fritz, Avenger is the number one character. I always play the Avenger. I mean, we all have our favorite characters. If the Avenger is your favorite character, sound off. Why? And what are your counters to the points that move against it?